So what'd you order for lunch?
Piata.
What's piata?
Oh, it's street Italian food.
So are you still doing one meal a day?
Yeah, I am. So I ordered the family meal from Piata. It's like $40, and I eat it all by myself.
That's efficient.
It's fairly efficient. I make it last a couple of days because I'll also cook something. I don't like to have only one dish. I'm more of an Epicurean, so I like having a variety of foods, variety of seasonings. You know,
I've seen you eat it at a buffet. It's impressive. You wouldn't think that someone your size could put down that much food. Do you, and I know you're a minimalist, so do you just have like one set of silverware and like a giant bowl?
yeah, that's exactly right. I actually have a big fork and a big spoon, like bigger than average, right? And I eat out of those metal bowls you use for preparing ingredients. Those are much easier to clean, and also they hold a lot more, so I don't have to fill things up as often.
So I said it was efficient, but I mean, that's just one strategy that you employ to be more efficient. What are some other basic ones that you do? Things that other people might do, but you take it a little further.
Multitasking. Let's say I try to multitask uh, throughout the day with everything that I do. And I have a certain philosophy when it comes to multitasking. You can coordinate tasks so that you allocate the optimal amount of attention to every task without compromising the efficacy of those tasks. I'm going to be more specific because that sounds like gibberish. Um, Basically, you have tasks that require that you use your mind. We'll call those active tasks, and tasks that don't. We'll call those passive tasks. Okay. When you combine those, notice that you're not having to use your mind for both. You just have to use your mind for the active task, not the passive task. And an example of an active task is like using a computer, using my laptop. But an example of a passive task is stretching. So that cloth on the wall there, it's not for decoration. I use that cloth to protect the wall so that I can do wall splits. Um, when you sit for prolonged periods of times, your hips become very tight, and that can lead to issues. It definitely hinders your flexibility and mobility, which is important for squats and Olympic weightlifting movements such as clean and jerks and the snatch. So those are movements that I care about. I have to flex on a regular basis to maintain my flexibility, mobility, and overall health. So I stretch. I do wall splits every day for over an hour. But I'm not just gonna do the splits for an hour without doing something else. So I also have this laptop desk table, whatever you want to call it. And
I think
I will, huh?
I think I had that same exact one at one point.
And I use this while I stretch. So
Yeah.
you'll be right about there. And this way I can stretch and use the computer to entertain myself or do work. And that's a way I can be more productive during that hour. Sometimes I will also sing or practice singing because it's good to lie on the floor and do that, like do vocal drills. It ensures that you have correct posture, um, forces you to focus on breath support and those other things. Anyways, that's what I mean. I just like to multitask by combining a active task that requires my attention and a passive task which doesn't. And then this way I can do both without really compromising the efficacy of those tasks, the quality of those tasks.
Yeah, the obvious main takeaway is that active and passive principle. And you're applying that in you can save the actual video of you doing the splits for your OnlyFans. But we get the picture for sure. And I do similar things with like the flowability program and basic like posturing and vertical planking while using the computer or sitting at a desk, as well as, some other drills that I incorporate throughout the day, in addition to a longer session. All those things create residual posture changes that help me throughout the day. So it's wild. It's this internal and external environmental hormesis, this the poison is in the dose effect. You're setting up your environment to make this stress positive or eustress. So instead of just waking up and not having any schedule at all, and who knows what's happening to you, you're setting up your day by changing internal and external environment. It's something that all of us can do, and it starts with just tracking it. I got this from or I saw Lex Fridman using this. You just punch it, and I'm not going to hit it because I don't want to hit it till tomorrow, but I'll look at it for a few seconds, squeeze it, drop a toothpick into a bottle. So just measuring that and then finding satisfaction in that first prepares you to do all the other things that you want to do. There's probably ancient, people that did similar things, so that's not an idea that's original at all. That's just something that, I've seen other people do. So there are things like that you can do in terms of changing your environment to improve your efficiency. And it's like you're setting up on these background, like on a computer, you can run a download in the background and then still do other stuff. And then soft work versus hard work. I think a lot of this can be done in soft work time. And really all the time that you're not doing hard work can be soft work. So you can multitask when you're not doing, let's say if you're preparing a legal statement for someone, you aren't going to multitask quite as much, but you still are going to do, maybe a little bit, just maybe not as intensely as in the morning when it's more soft work. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. I want to give another example of active and passive tasks. People do this already. So when they drive, they'll sometimes listen to music or they'll listen to a podcast. Driving is the active task because it requires more attention. The risks are high if you're not paying attention. It makes sense. And then listening to music, that's passive. Most people are not seriously thinking about the music, its organization, its instrumentation, and so on. They're just receiving it. So in that sense, a lot of people are already doing active and passive multitasking. They can just find ways to implement that throughout the rest of their lives. Now, for preparing that legal statement, I kind of do the active passive thing there as well, because I will do my legal work, but I'll also have music playing in the background, and then I'll sometimes sing along, right? So I'm actually doing 3 things at once. And what is this doing? Well, first, I'm being productive because I'm working. Second, I'm maintaining an elevated mood because the music is enjoyable. I like listening to it, so I feel better. And then I'm practicing singing again, and that's a skill that I care about. So the proper way to think about multitasking is that you're trying to optimize your resources. There's no need for you to concentrate on only one thing if you can afford to do other things at the same time. A computer has multiple cores, multiple processors, and that's so that it can do parallel processing. It's like, well, you may not just want to use the internet. You may also want to have iTunes open, or you may want to have something else open in the background, like Reuben was saying. So that, like, we're capable of doing a lot, and we should take advantage of it. That's really my point.
Let's see. So we're talking about things that you maybe do in your office or at home. You mentioned if you're driving or riding a bike, you can multitask. We don't have children. We don't have, some of the external responsibilities that maybe some of our listeners might have. What are some ways that people with a lot of obligations and responsibilities can still do this? I know that the observation element is fundamental to kind of finding your purpose, right? Self-awareness. And people have been commenting on that. It's cool that we're talking about self-awareness and just understanding what you yourself wants. So if people want this, if they want to multitask and they see it as useful, how can they do it if they have, 3 kids, 3 jobs, and almost no time? Because I hear that a lot. I don't have time to do this.
Yeah. First, they need to cut the waste, cut the fat. There must be things in their lives that they just don't care about, and they need to prioritize. So identify what is most important, and then discard the things that just are not valuable enough, that don't provide enough value in your life. And that will give you the room or the resources to like concentrate on what matters. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying I don't actually know what people consider to be most valuable or least valuable. That's a determination that they have to make for themselves. But once you do identify like those things that aren't valuable to you, you should just sort of let them go and focus on what matters. And that might be family. We're using that as the example. Like your children likely matter a lot to you, so be more intentional with the time that you spend with them. If you're only with them for 30 minutes a day, an hour a day, then how about increasing that? How about having some kind of plan or goal with how you spend your time with them? Don't just recreationally interact with them, but maybe try to teach them a valuable lesson during that time, or have a personal conversation with them. I really think it's about like first identifying what matters and then investing more and being more deliberate about your investment. If you do those 3 things, then you should be moving faster towards your goal, or you should be more aligned with your objectives.
So I've had some feedback in terms of our conversations, and it seems like people bring up self-awareness a lot. And I think there's a link between self-awareness and finding your purpose. And then once you find your purpose, so much else falls in place. So would you agree? And how do you see that connection being made?
If you're aware of your passions, your feelings, your interests, then that's going to imbue you with a purpose. And then you're going to move very deliberately in that direction. And presumably you will have some strengths, some talents that will allow you to succeed.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I wasn't really going to add that much more, but I just wanted to say that I'm very impressed by people in general. Just this is not a like a useless body. Like we don't have a useless. We're not just mere flesh. We are somehow able to do really wonderful and impressive things. It's like with very limited resources, we have created skyscrapers and planes. We have ventured into outer space, right? And this is, to be honest, there's no real reason why we had to do any of those things, but we had the desire. We valued this kind of exploration and this boundary and pushing the boundaries. And then it was by applying ourselves for great amounts of time it was by applying ourselves in that way that we managed to succeed.
Most definitely. We didn't have to go to the moon, but we did. And it's easy to be pessimistic or cynical when looking out at other people or looking at yourself. But you need to keep that in mind, what you said. Like, people are pretty impressive. All it takes is going to YouTube and typing in people being impressive. And like, there'll be 20-minute videos of really cool stuff. That's a good reminder. And you can do that when you're doing your soft work. It'll be a passive task. Make yourself laugh, while you stretch, and then go do something else. It's those little things that require the self-awareness to know that it's important and know that it matters. And then to do it, you're like hacking your brain chemistry, right? It's like, I know how to make myself happy just through, gratitude and through finding some sort of appreciation for even dropping a toothpick into a bottle, and then satisfaction. If I could sit here and laugh at how dumb that is, and like it also beautiful at the same time, why can't you do that with anything else. And I think that's Jordan Peterson's like, how do these parables, they're so simple, like a kid can understand them. Or if you look at native or indigenous folks, or any culture, timeless, through the ages, they have simple stories that tell us so much information. And it's powerful. And you alluded to that when you talked about like logic and creativity. It requires both to see that, and even little kids see it. Mm-hmm. So we're all capable of doing it, and that's what, part of the reason why, you're impressed by humans. We're pretty cool. We can do stuff.
Why does dropping the toothpick make you feel happy?
Because I know what it's attached to, like the waking up at 4 a.m. thing, and there's a certain set of behaviors that I have to do in order to wake up at 4 a.m. So that's like the variable that I know I want to keep it constant. And then every time I do it, toothpick in, hit the thing. It's pretty cool. And I think when I get to like 100, it'll be even more. I don't know. It's hard to say. Will it be more satisfactory? Will it bring me more happiness or not? At that point, it may just be such a habit that it is me and it doesn't bring me quite as much joy, but then you can move on to something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's serving the function of giving you positive feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have attached meaning to or significance to the action of dropping the toothpick and clicking the clicker. And that's why it feels good. It's symbolic. And like it's symbolic of the effort of having to go to sleep early so you can wake up at 4 a.m. every single day. And then having the discipline to do that for 100 days in a row.
I added in the clicker because it's hard to count the toothpicks. I got to like 8 and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, I can see that. A value system. I've used that word a lot. Really, I'm just saying or meaning a hierarchy of values. So we need to identify what is most important to us and then like what's least important to us and everything in between. How exactly do you identify what's valuable to you?
I don't know. I had a thought just now that, listeners may be hearing this stuff, and although it's simple, it is, it makes sense. It's intelligent. And it doesn't have to be some like pretentious, like uppity, like I am disciplined and I am strong and I am superior. I am this, I am that. It's just you deciding what you want, determining that value system and getting it. I don't care if you're homeless, like, or you don't aspire to have a home or a car or a cell phone. Like if you do this, and there are plenty of people doing it, aren't listening to any podcast at all. Cool. Awesome. You're doing what we're talking about. But there's probably a certain subset of the world that could hear this conversation and be like, yeah, there's like 3 things that I know I do too much that, not only don't bring me that much joy and take away from it. I'm going to get rid of those things for, 13 days and feel way better. And then, all right, let's see what 100 is like. And the changes that you make doing just such a simple thing like that is like almost a miracle. It's wild.
Mm-hmm. If you're wondering why we're even talking about value systems and how that relates to self-awareness, it's because you have to be like, in order to have a value system, you need to be aware of what's important to you. So this directly flows from self-awareness. If you're self-aware, you know what's important to you. All right. And I'm going to make some assumptions about Reuben because just to, I guess, exemplify these ideas, like he's waking up at 4 a.m. That's not something normal people do. This is also not something he normally did. Like I think he only started doing this a month ago. How long ago?
Yeah, 13 days.
13 days. So before then, he probably woke up later, 5 a.m., 6 a.m. I'm not sure.
Well, it was always inconsistent. That was the problem. It was like sometimes it was 3, sometimes it was 6, sometimes it was 5, and I hated it. So I was like, what is the most reasonable time that I know will be a challenge that I can, still do? And what's going to make me tired when the sun goes down? Because that feeling is almost better than hitting the snooze button or waking up and being productive. I love being tired when it's time to go to bed. I cannot stand any form of insomnia. It sucks.
Right. So he changed his behavior. This is not new, or this is not something he always did. This is something new. Why? It must be because he values it. There must be something about waking up at 4 a.m. that he likes. And this is the important point. If you value something, you're willing to commit resources in order to obtain it. You're willing to work for something you value, something you love. The more you value something, the more you're willing to sacrifice in order to make that value a reality. If you don't value it, then you shouldn't be investing resources into something. In other words, once you identify that value system, you are able to allocate your limited resources in proportion to the value, or in proportion to those values, right?
What the word value gets thrown around in math a lot, right? Like, so it's funny how we describe things. You're trying to be articulate or poetic, and then you come back to like math terms or physics terms, because they are just that. They articulate the point, and in a way, because they're simple and describe such big ideas, they're beautiful. So it's already poetry. So it's making our job easier.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Reuben, he values sleeping well, just having high quality sleep. And that means that he needs to wake up at the same time and at a fairly early time. He's willing to make sacrifices in order to make that a reality. It's like, and it's not easy to wake up at 4 a.m. I've done it maybe once or twice in my entire life. It's not something that I want to do again.
The first variable was very easy. It's just to not have any poison at all whatsoever, or alcohol before going to bed. That's simple. So like, I plan on doing some sort of, in one experiment where I, kind of show myself the effects of binge drinking, maybe 100, 200 days in, but I feel so much better. Like metabolically, like my engine just feels like it's on a schedule now. Whereas before everything was thrown off, like you're throwing a wrench into a gear. So that was easy to fix, very easy to fix. And then having tasks to complete as soon as I wake up. So turn on the brightest light possible. When the sun comes up and you're driving, that's when it's truly like the brightest, or like if you hit it right when the sun's going down. When it's noon, unless you look straight up, like it's not going to hurt your eyes. If I wake up, turn the brightest lights on possible, not to the point of, damaging them, but like, it's bright because the sun is coming up. It's still not going to come up for 2-3 hours though outside. So I have to create that. And then I start doing stuff outside, feed the cats, stretch, just get basic, easy stuff done when I'm in a groggy state. But that groggy state turns into slowly more of just a meditative state. And you're doing those active and passive tasks. And you're still like, just because you've set the schedule, you're like a semi-conscious robot. And that you can snap out of it whenever, I guess, but it doesn't have to be a negative thing. Being tired doesn't have to be something where like, oh, woe is me, I need to go, sit and have my coffee and still snuggle up next to my blanket for another hour. Like if you like to start your morning like that, cool. But I'd rather just rip the Band-Aid off. And it seems to help me. But it doesn't mean that everybody has to do it that way. What are some other things I do in the morning? I try to listen to something that isn't just background noise. Like I want to listen to something that I'm actually going to maybe take into a conversation later in the day. Like I have clients that I see each day, and I want to be able to talk to them about something other than just weightlifting or just like the weather. So typically we have common interests, or over time we share common interests, or you learn what those are. And the stuff that I consume in the morning, maybe intentionally sometimes, most of the time not, usually prepares me for those conversations. But it's really just preparing me for all conversations. They just happen to be, clients of mine or athletes. So that's another thing I think helps. I want to make some music later. Maybe someday that'll be my primary like frog that I eat, like Mark Twain said, eat a frog in the morning and nothing's as bad. So like wake up, slay the dragon by making like a song that I put into a Instagram post. I've thought about that before. So maybe I'll do that one day, but not right now.
Have you ever told someone that you love them in a romantic way?
Yes.
Was it nerve-wracking or embarrassing or shameful?
Only when I was younger. Now, I mean, now it's something that, you don't say unless you truly, mean it, or like when you say it, you understand that, like, if it is truly in a romantic way, you feel that way. If it's not in a romantic way, if it's a platonic love thing, that's easy to say. Like, I love you, Zach, or like, I love you, Neff and Cleo. That's so easy. And the romantic piece maybe makes it more nerve-wracking just because of physiologically what's happening in your body and brain. But I don't think it's too difficult once you're practiced.
Mm-hmm. An expression of love is tantamount to declaring vulnerability or weakness. You are saying that someone else has control over you, control over your emotions, control over your logic sometimes. Like, you are conceding that this person can influence you more than you can influence yourself in a way. Right. And so this is why people may be reluctant to form a value system, because a value demands obedience. It demands that you give up something in exchange for pursuing that value. If you're a weightlifter and you want to win a competition, like that's you're valuing winning. But then the price for that is exercising every day or training every day at the gym. And then it may be following a diet, and it may be abstaining from alcohol, and it may be even foregoing friendships or certain relationships or parties and all these other things. There are sacrifices that are associated with pursuing a value. And people just don't like that. They don't want to have to admit that there's something greater than them, that there's something that can influence them to that extent. But that's childish, right? Like Reuben saying, like, that's childish. Only a child would refuse to acknowledge that there are truly beautiful things that should move you spiritually, emotionally, intellectually, whatever. It's so childish to refuse to acknowledge that. And if you're an adult, you readily admit that there are things you love. And if you love them, you pursue them with all your heart. And if you don't love them, then you don't waste your limited resources on those things, because they are just better things for you to do.
It can be childish, but I think their children, can, be exemplary to some of that stuff in some cases. Maybe not all the time, but sometimes they get it right and they do it really well. So it's like, it's foolish. And we've all, played the role of the fool before, whether intentionally or not. And it happens. The failure stuff that we'll talk about later, we can get into why, people fall. But like you said, people are incredible. People are already doing things that improve themselves and improve other people. As long as they acknowledge it, or they drop the toothpick into the bottle, they can practice every day. Some days you have better practice sessions than others. And it's, like I've said before, I'll keep saying it, it's one big day with some naps. Every single day that you have to remember the one big day. Just think of your sleeps as naps. It's the same day.
Yeah, I like what you said about being a fool, because people are fools for love. And I'm not only talking about romantic love. I'm talking about love for anything. It can be love for your work. It can be love for art. It can be love for life itself, right? It's just when you are willing to confess this love, you will go to the ends of the earth to feel it, like to fulfill that passion. So
it's what a lot of like toxic relationships can be built on. Like you deal with toxicity because you have romantic love for someone. So you're dealing with things that you wouldn't normally deal with. And you, in some sense, are a fool for doing that, but you have chosen to do it, and you're motivated to do it, and you do it anyway, and you believe you have a goal, and maybe you achieve said goal eventually. So are you a fool? You know, you're a fool for love in that sense, I guess, but later on you came out looking pretty good. Maybe you didn't, but in the moment it's kind of foolish.
I mean, my line of thinking is more that if you have a great desire for something, you're willing to make a great investment, you know, in that one that would otherwise appear foolish to people. But this is just how you have to behave. It's like we've been talking about failure and its relationship to growing as a person, or learning. If you're so prideful, then that you can't ever expose your weaknesses, then you won't allow yourself to fail. But then if you love something, you're going to overcome that pride, that self-doubt, or that sense of embarrassment, and you will obey even if it's humiliating. And then you will fail, but it's by making this extraordinary investment that you will eventually obtain ultimate success.
Most definitely. And if you happen to be the logical one, and somebody else is the fool, you have to have the empathy, and not because empathy from a moral perspective is good. We know that, right? But from a scientific perspective, in that I, person A versus person B, or however many involved, we all have different perspectives, and our brain chemistry is operating differently at this moment in time. Our ideas are different at this moment in time, and we're not going to agree. And if we keep moving forward in some way and don't kill each other, maybe we can figure this out. And if you can't do that, you walk away, and you have to be okay with that too. That has to be in the arrangement or the set of expectations going in.